evening. You're watching the news at 6 with me, Sean Russell. The news at 6 is all about the day's biggest developing stories, and we'll be filling you in on them over the next half hour. But first, the headlines we're tracking right now. Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrives in China, holds discussions with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Xi'an to maintain peace on borders. Four Indians among 14 people killed in Kabul attack. Taliban claims responsibility for attack on a guest house. Supreme Court puts on hold the Delhi government's circular on pursuing defamatory cases against the media, demands explanation on what prompted the order. Wholesale price index plummets to minus 2.65% for April, mainly on account of decline in prices of fuel and manufactured items. Well, top story this evening, Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in China's Xi'an this morning on the first leg of his three-nation tour. He was accorded a ceremonial welcome. The highlight of his visit, of course, was the unusual departure from normal protocol when Chinese President Xi Jinping met Modi at Xi'an. The PM's first visit to China will focus on cementing India's relationship by leveraging growing trade and economic ties.
A handshake with Chinese President Xi Jinping in his hometown Xi'an set the ball rolling for Prime Minister Narendra Modi's three-nation tour on Thursday. Modi and Xi held bilateral talks. These were followed by a delegation-level meeting between officials of both countries. Experts say that Xi's appearance outside Beijing to meet the Indian Prime Minister seemed to underscore China's determination to set aside past rancor between the two nations.
Possibilities of India-China cooperation in counter-terrorism activities is being given a greater push now. It will send... See, China is also now equally concerned about the rise of terrorism and fundamentalism. And if China and India can cooperate against these activities in Afghanistan, it will send a very important signal to other countries, especially Pakistan. And I think Prime Minister Modi should use this opportunity.
India is likely to seek abolition of non-tariff barriers as part of efforts to reduce widening trade deficit and boost local industry. New Delhi wants greater market access in sectors such as pharmaceuticals, IT services and farm products involving bovine meat. Later, Chinese and Indian officials accompanied Modi to the famous Terracotta Army or the Terracotta Warriors and Horses. Dating from around 210 BC, the Terracotta Army was crafted during the reign of Qin Emperor, who ordered the life-size figures to be buried in tombs around his own Shaanxi province's Lingtong County near Xi'an. Modi will visit Mongolia on May 17th, the first ever Indian Prime Minister to visit the country. He will reach South Korea on May 18th. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And what's in store for Prime Minister Modi today in his China visit? Well, our correspondent Frank Pereira is in Beijing and he sent us this report.
Prime Minister Modi has spent the entire day in Xi'an, and he was accompanied by President Xi Jinping all throughout his stay in Xi'an. He will be reaching Beijing in a short while from now. At 11 p.m. local time is when his flight is scheduled to land in Beijing. There is no official business as far as Beijing is concerned for tonight, but it's going to be a jam-packed day tomorrow where Prime Minister Modi will meet his counterpart, and they will also sign several agreements, and several high-level bilateral talks are likely to take place tomorrow all through the day, of course. And in the evening, Prime Minister Modi will be visiting a local university where he is scheduled to address the students of the university, post which he will then fly out of Beijing and head to Shanghai, where he will meet members of the Indian diaspora. So as far as Prime Minister Modi's visit to China is concerned, the mood, of course, is upbeat, but not much is expected as far as the border issues are concerned. But everyone is expecting a lot to happen as far as economic ties between the two countries are concerned, and both countries are planning to take trade a level higher. With camera person DK Pandey, this is Frank Pereira reporting from Beijing, China.
And we'll go across to Beijing to our correspondent Frank Pereira for the latest as far as the Prime Minister's schedule is concerned. Frank, we just heard your report about what is expected, but everything staying on course. And as far as what happened today between the Chinese President and Prime Minister Modi, they spoke about terrorism, which was not on the agenda, but both countries felt it was necessary to have a conversation about it.
Yes, indeed. There were some contentious or sticky issues that were raised. The border issue was raised, the Arunachal Pradesh visa issue was raised, and another issue that was taken up by Prime Minister Modi was the issue of terrorism, and both the nations, of course, spoke about it, not at length. Let's not forget it was a short meeting between President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi, which lasted about an hour. The Foreign Secretary, Subramaniam Jaishankar, has termed the three-leg visit to China in three different parts. He's called the visit to Xi'an as a cultural visit, the visit to Beijing as a political, and the visit to Shanghai would be the business stop, is how the Foreign Secretary really has put it. And it seems to have gone on those particular lines, because there was a lot of color, there was a lot of culture as well attached to Prime Minister Modi's visit to Xi'an, of course, and the visit is still underway. The Prime Minister is, in fact, he's just left from Xi'an, and he would be reaching Beijing later tonight. And of course, not much of the agenda as far as Beijing is concerned today, but tomorrow is going to be a really packed day for the Prime Minister, Ishan.
Yes, absolutely. Indeed, it's going to be a packed day tomorrow. But Frank, the two countries have, this is not the first interaction between the two leaderships of the countries. Ever since Prime Minister Modi came into power, there were major projects that were sanctioned, including the Ahmedabad projects that were being done in partnership with China. So as far as major Chinese investment or any other major political, what are the rumor mills saying as far as what could be the outcomes of this visit?
As far as the outcome itself is concerned, there are several agreements that are likely to be signed between Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Li Keqiang tomorrow. They would be meeting, and he will be welcomed by Li Keqiang tomorrow, and they will meet at the Great Hall of the People here in Beijing. And, the local trade experts and others, in fact, say that these agreements could go up to the tune of about $10 billion US. Of course, we'll have to wait and see whether or not any of these agreements will really fructify or not. But of course, the mood here amongst the traders and the economic community is upbeat at the moment, and they're expecting a lot from this visit, because in the past we've seen that the trade between the two countries, there is a trade deficit, and both countries are going to work towards ensuring that this trade deficit really is brought down, and both countries can then do business far more easily. That's what the countries really are looking at. Both India and China want to ensure that the traders can go on with their business in a smooth manner, Ishan.
All right, so let's see whether economic issues or political issues dominate the rest of this visit. Thanks very much, Frank, for that update. Frank, of course, will be keeping a tab on the situation over there for us, and we'll be getting in the latest updates for us. All right, let's also talk about what's been happening back home as far as Prime Minister Modi's visit to China is concerned. So let's have a listen into what various political leaders have had to say about this.
If the entire world is considering that 21st century is going to be the century of Asia, then obviously India and China are going to be the two main important regions. So just having this vision in the mind, Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi is going to outreach China, despite we are having a sensitive relations with China. But Modi ji is doing an honest approach with a constructive mind towards China, and the news which we are getting for his welcome in China, we hope that China will also respond in a very positive and mature manner, and both these countries will go on the path of development with mutual benefit and mutual cooperation.
मैं समझता हूं कि प्रधानमंत्री ने जो दौरे का फैसला किया है अच्छा है। इससे पहले चीन के राष्ट्रपति हमारे देश में आ चुके थे, इसलिए ये दौरा उनका एक तरह से ड्यू था और वहां जाकर अपनी बात कहनी चाहिए। और जो हमारे डिप्लोमेटिक जो चैनल है उससे हमेशा आदान प्रदान होते रहना चाहिए।
It is a reciprocal visit. Earlier the Chinese leadership was here. Now he has gone there, and we hope this visit further strengthens the relationship between China and India.
Obviously, there is one is a bit of symbolism, but I think put aside the symbolism, there are critical issues both for Modi and Xi Jinping to address. And one of the critical issues from the Indian side would be the trade issue or the lack of the trade surplus, which is heavily in favor of the trade deficit, which is heavily in favor of China. I think that's going to seriously come. And again, to this, I think a lot of commentary from the Chinese media, for instance, put the blame on the Indian side for the lack of improvement on this front, saying that it is the lack of access to Chinese investment in India.
Well, time for us to take a quick break right now. Coming up on the other side, we'll be talking about the inflation numbers. Yes, they've gone down, so good news on the price front. More on that on the other side.
No politicians' pictures in government ads, orders the Supreme Court. Says photos encourage a personality cult. What are the positives of this order? And what's the flip side? Watch The Big Picture at 6:30 p.m. on Rajya Sabha television.
Welcome back. You're watching the news at 6. Now, some political news. The BJP and the Congress today sparred over issues they debated in the budget session that concluded yesterday. Addressing the media, Congress leaders criticized the government for what they called undermining the upper house. The BJP, however, hit back, saying the Congress was raking up non-issues.
A day after the budget session, the Congress and the BJP continued their debate on the Black Money Bill outside Parliament. Congress leader Ghulam Nabi Azad told a press conference that a bill to check unaccounted wealth stashed abroad cannot qualify as a money bill.
There in Lok Sabha they have a majority, they will bulldoze. Here they do not have the majority, and then they make the normal bills into the money bills.
Congress leader in Lok Sabha Mallikarjun Kharge said the government was reducing the role of the parliamentary committees in scrutinizing legislations.
Standing committee, joint select committee या select committee में अगर भेजने से ये होता है कि वहाँ पर उसको ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा एक चर्चा होती है, कुछ लोग रूल्स हैं तो रेटिफाई कर सकते हैं, उसको सरकार को भी फायदा होता है.
BJP leaders refuted the charges, even as they claimed that the NDA government will not replicate the policy paralysis of the former UPA government.
The decision making cannot be slowed down. They were in earlier government being labelled as a government of paralysis. Now obviously we don't want a similar tag.
The war of words seemed to be a continuation of the party's position during the budget session. The BJP is insisting that the Congress is being obstructionist, while the Congress is accusing the government of misusing brute majority in the Lok Sabha. Kriti Mishra, Rajya Sabha TV.
Now, the Supreme Court has stayed implementation of a Delhi government circular on initiating defamation cases against the media for publishing or broadcasting news that are detrimental to the government's reputation. The bench also issued a notice to the Kejriwal government seeking an explanation as to what prompted the circular. The plea was filed by advocate Amit Sibal against Arvind Kejriwal. The BJP and the Congress welcomed the top court's decision. They'd already criticized the circular, calling it hypocritical and anti-democratic.
We would like to welcome the Supreme Court's orders. It is heartening to know that Supreme Court also has understood that the freedom of speech, freedom of expression is very important. And what Kejriwal through this circular wanted to do was not only gag the media, but gag common citizen also, political parties, their leaders also. And it somehow it was undemocratic and it was not in the interest of democracy as a whole.
इस तरह का तुगलकी डिसीजन आप दें, आप मीडिया को डराने का काम करें, मीडिया को धमकाने का काम करें, अपनी कमियों को छुपाने के लिए आप मीडिया को सचिवालय में जाने से रोकें, मीडिया की आप मॉनिटरिंग करें, मीडिया की आप स्पाइंग करें और मीडिया को कानून पढ़ाएं कि सेक्शन 449, सेक्शन 500 के अंदर आप मीडिया को ये बताना चाह रहे हैं कि अगर आप ऐसा करेंगे, अगर आपके लोग गलत करेंगे तो क्या मीडिया दिखाएगा नहीं?
The Broadcast Editors Association welcomes this observation of the Supreme Court, and it shows how strong democratic roots are. If anybody seeks to damage those roots, he will be not only neutralized, but his image across the country will go in a negative way.
Well, now some inflationary trends, and the wholesale price index plummeted to minus 2.65% for April after shrinking minus 2.33% in March 2015. The drop was recorded mainly on account of decline in prices of fuel and manufactured items. The latest set of figures indicate that the deflationary pressures continued for the sixth month in a row. Manufactured products inflation stood at a minus 0.52%, while inflation in food articles category stood at 5.73%. Fuel and power inflation was recorded at minus 13.03% in April. The dip in factory output for March and low retail and the wholesale inflation is expected to revive the industry's demand for a cut in RBI policy rates to boost growth. But despite key bills getting referred to House panels, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley termed the budget session as a productive one. He named the bill on black money as one of the biggest achievements for the government in the last session. However, he regretted that the key reform bills on tax reforms and land acquisition were referred to two committees. He also blamed the Congress for adopting a delaying tactics. According to Jaitley, the target of rolling out GST by April next year will be a big challenge.
2013 के कानून के तहत सिंचाई योजनाएं नहीं हो सकती, हाउसिंग फॉर पुअर नहीं हो सकता, रूरल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर नहीं हो सकता, ग्रामीण क्षेत्रों में जो इंडस्ट्रियल कॉरिडोर्स बनाने हैं जिसमें रोजगार की सुविधा और अवसर मिले वो नहीं हो सकते, वो केवल इन संशोधनों के बाद होंगे। अब ये जो रास्ता हम लोगों ने अपनाया है कि जिसमें जॉइंट कमेटी को ये गया है, अब जॉइंट कमेटी अपनी रिकमेंडेशन दे और जॉइंट कमेटी इज ऑलवेज रिपोर्टेड टू द हाउस। मुझे नहीं लगता कि लोकसभा में इसको पारित करने में कोई डिफिकल्टी आएगी। उसके बाद राज्यसभा में जाएगा और राज्यसभा में जाने के बाद मैं उम्मीद करता हूं कि अगर कमेटी रिकमेंडेशन देती है तो सभी दल उसको स्वीकार करेंगे। एंड देयरफॉर एवरीबॉडी मस्ट रियलाइज that GST is not a political agenda. GST today is a national agenda. And if it is going to create India into one unified market, have free flow of goods and services, is going to facilitate free trade in this country, going to improve the revenues of the state, going to improve the revenues of the center, improve India's GDP, then nobody should get a thrill in delaying GST. And therefore, we must pass it come what may in July.
Well, time now for all the other national news and updates in Nationwide. The Supreme Court today said former CBI chief Ranjit Sinha must be investigated for abuse of power while he was heading the agency. The Supreme Court observed that Sinha held inappropriate meetings at his home with the accused in the coal and 2G scams. He said the Central Vigilance Commission should examine Sinha's case. Union Home Minister Rajnath Singh met RSS Chief Mohan Bhagwat at the Sangh headquarters in Nagpur today. The closed-door meeting lasted for about 2 hours in which important issues like the land bill were discussed. Singh will also review the anti-Naxal operations in eastern Vidarbha region. He will hold a meeting with the Maharashtra Chief Secretary along with the IGP of Nagpur. The Supreme Court today dismissed a batch of petitions filed by telecom companies, including Vodafone and Bharti Airtel, seeking extension of spectrum licenses. The Supreme Court said it saw no merit in the petitions that sought extension of the 20-year spectrum licenses by another 10. Well, time for another quick break. All the international news on the other side, so do stay tuned.
सरकार ने किया मल्टी ब्रांड रिटेल में 51% विदेशी निवेश का रास्ता साफ। विपक्ष में रहते बीजेपी ने किया था इसका विरोध। देखिए देश देशांतर, रिटेल में एफडीआई, नीति और राजनीति, आज रात 8:30 बजे।
Welcome back. You're watching the news at 6. Now, 4 Indians were among 14 people killed in a hostage situation in a guest house in Kabul on Thursday. The standoff ended with one of the attackers being killed. It was part of what the Taliban is calling its spring offensive against the Afghan government. The Afghan envoy has said that the government is looking into the matter.
An overnight hostage drama in Kabul left 14 people dead on Thursday. 4 of them were Indians, 1 was an American. The Taliban gunmen who took around 50 captives were overpowered in a gun battle that lasted 7 hours. 6 Indians were among several foreigners trapped in the crossfire.
داخل صنعاولی شدیم فایر شد خودم مطمئنم تقریبا 7 نفر در تختای خواب بودیم.
A Taliban statement said that the attack was intended to target important people present inside the guest house.
تحقیقات ما در این راستا تیمای تحقیقاتی ما کار میکنه که ما اصلا سر این موضوع کار کنیم چون این عمله نبود که بالای دروازه هتل شده باشه یا پیره‌دارا را زده باشه داخل شده باشه.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke to Afghan President Ashraf Ghani and offered condolences. The attack comes a day after Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif visited Kabul. Sharif assured Islamabad's support in the Afghan government's battle against the Taliban. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Now, NATO foreign ministers met in Turkish city of Antalya for a two-day summit to discuss the situation in prominent global trouble spots. The crisis in the Middle East featured on its list along with the Ukrainian crisis and the status of NATO forces in Afghanistan.
Ukraine was once again a key focus of the NATO summit, with participants calling for the full implementation of the Minsk agreement. Secretary General Stoltenberg said the ceasefire had become ever more fragile, with reports of continuous fighting on its borders. The Ukrainian president stuck to claims that rebels were solely responsible for the violations.
The government of Ukraine has moved forward with a demanding reform agenda. Successful reforms will be crucial for stability and progress in Ukraine. We have stepped up our support for reforms through our advisory assistance and trust funds, and Ukraine can count on NATO's continued support.
І хотів би наголосити, що Україна є абсолютно твердим прихильником неухильного виконання всіх без виключення 13 пунктів Минських угод.
The migrant crisis in the Mediterranean Sea also took center stage. The German foreign minister said the military action against traffickers will continue. Earlier, the EU approved of robust military action at the emergency summit after hundreds of migrants died off the Libyan coast a few weeks before. 2 German warships are in the Mediterranean Sea to rescue the migrants.
Sie kennen den Entscheidungsprozess in den USA, der zum gegenwärtigen Zeitpunkt das amerikanische militärische Engagement, die amerikanische militärische Präsenz.
NATO also decided to maintain its presence in Afghanistan. The leaders are expected to next discuss the Middle East crisis, mainly how to tackle the Islamic State menace. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Now let's get news on the major fire that was there in a factory in the Philippines. The death toll in that fire mishap has gone up to 72. At the shoe factory in the Philippine capital of Manila that caught fire yesterday, scores of people have been killed. Hundreds are reportedly still missing. Police officials say the factory caught fire when sparks from welding ignited flammable chemicals at the building's entrance. Authorities pledged to take swift action against those responsible after the factory workers complained of poor health and safety standards. Many more are reportedly trapped inside. The factory owner confirmed that around 200 to 300 people were inside the building at the time of the fire.
Kung ano lang po yun nandyan, yun lang po ang bilangin. As against the total number of employees, so that we will have a full accounting on this very systematically. Mahirap po kasi papatayin natin yung buhay pa eh. Yun napakahirap po. Kaya ho, isa sa mga...
Now, news from Burundi, the latest global flashpoint. Sporadic violence and gunfire were reported in the capital, Bujumbura, a day after Burundian general said he deposed the president for seeking an unconstitutional third term in office. There were also reports of an attempted military coup that failed as forces loyal to the sitting president were in control. News agency Reuters quoted witnesses stating that mobs attacked 2 private radio stations and a television station. Members of the United Nations Security Council will hold emergency consultations on Thursday to discuss the leadership crisis. East African leaders have condemned the coup. Now, the death toll in Nepal and India from the latest quake has crossed 100. Since Tuesday, Nepal and northern states in India have been jolted by several aftershocks. As rescue and relief operations resumed, people have braved the cold, spending sleepless nights in the open.
13 aftershocks jolted Nepal on Wednesday, a day after a second powerful 7.3 magnitude earthquake hit the Himalayan kingdom. 79 people have been killed in the latest tremors. The number of injured has reached 2,300.
Let's see, let's hope for the best. Yes, they are searching for the rest. If they find the survivors, then that will be good.
This amateur video shows landslides triggered by the latest round of quakes. This meant that roads to remote villages in several areas have been blocked.
हामीले पसलहरु खोलेर बसेका थियौं हाम्रो गेस्ट हाउस पनि खोलेको थियो यी पसलहरु पनि खोलेको थियो जो 12:50 मा भुइँचालो आयो त्यतिखेर यो घर चाहिँ एकैचोटी हैन झरलम्मै यहाँ बाटोमा बस्यो बाटोमा बस्दाखेरि यहाँ धेरै भागदौड मचियो.
Thousands spent the night in the open under plastic tents, barely shielding them from the cold. Back in India, the toll in the tremors which jolted Bihar on Tuesday rose to 21. 84 people have been reported injured. 7 aftershocks of mild intensity were recorded on Wednesday. The NDRF and State Disaster Response Force teams are in affected districts to carry out rescue and relief operations. Bureau Report, Rajya TV.
Now for other international news stories, here's Global Buzz. New Zealand's Wellington region is experiencing a flood-like situation after unexpected rain since last night. Streets and houses were inundated while train and road services were also badly affected. More rains are also predicted for the coming days in the region. An amateur video surfaced showing rebels storming a military checkpoint in Syria's Idlib province. It showed explosions carried out by fighters targeting the Al-Fanar military checkpoint at Mount Arbain by detonating explosives in a tunnel beneath it. While on the side of the Lebanese border, battles are intensifying against the Nusra Front and Islamic State militants amid a progress made by the Syrian government troops. Pakistan observed a day of mourning a day after the gunmen attacked a bus and killed at least 46 minority Shiites. Hundreds of Pakistanis paid their last respects at a mosque funeral to the people who died in the attack. Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif chaired an emergency security meeting to review the situation, and he also condemned the brutal killing. And all the sports news now in Sports Beat. Olympic medalists Abhinav Bindra and Gagan Narang failed to qualify for the final round of the men's 10-meter air rifle event on the opening day of the International Shooting Sport Federation World Cup. Bindra finished 15th in the qualification round, while Narang finished 26th. Alvaro Morata returned to haunt Real Madrid at the Santiago Bernabeu as his goals sent the Champions League holders out of the tournament and put Juventus in the final. Juventus went into the second leg of the semi-final holding a 2-1 advantage, and with Morata cancelling out Ronaldo's penalty, the Old Lady of Turin advanced to the Champions League final for the first time since 2003. They'll face 4 times champions Barcelona in the final in Berlin. Swiss world number 2 Roger Federer defeated Uruguay's Pablo Cuevas as 7-6, 6-4 in the second round of the Italian Open in Rome on Wednesday. Federer comfortably avoided a repeat of his second round exit in Rome last year as he booked his place in the last 16. Federer will now play against South African Kevin Anderson. The members of the US men's 4x100 meters relay team that won the silver at the 2012 Olympics have been stripped of the medals following the doping conviction of sprinter Tyson Gay. IOC notified US Olympic Committee that the 4x100 meter relay team had been disqualified and all its medals were drawn. Trell Kimmins, Justin Gatlin and Ryan Bailey as well as Jeffrey Demps and Darvis Patton will lose the medal after Gay was banned last year for positive test for an anabolic steroid. Well, that's all from us. Goodbye.